Hello, Mahak. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Um, would love to learn a little bit more about your background. So to kick things off, can you just tell me, introduce yourself, what do you do currently, and your journey to Stanford?
Sure. Thank you so much, Krish, for having me with you on this podcast. It's always exciting to share my journey. It's good to relive those moments. As a quick start, I am an engineer from NSIT. I'm only the second person from NSIT who ever made it to Stanford Business School in the entire history of NSIT. After NSIT, I worked in Nomura in their structuring department. And after that, I joined my family business. So my father runs artificial leather manufacturing business. It has a lot of applications such as footwear manufacturing or shoe manufacturing, automobiles, etc. So when I joined his business, that's the first time I felt that kind of paradigm shift from being an employee who was like told what I need to do versus suddenly having a lot of this unstructured time and having to make these decisions for my dad's employees in some cases while I was learning from them as well. So I think that's when I suddenly felt unprepared to take those business decisions, and the thought of doing an MBA came. Now, for me, I was very clear that I'm doing an MBA because I want to really upskill myself rather than getting a better job as an outcome of an MBA. A lot of people have that as an outcome for an MBA, which is totally fine. But for me, I think I was very specific in terms of the kind of skills and experiences that I was looking for. So I remember applying to 4 business schools in the first round and made it to two, did not make it to two. Of course, was very, very fortunate to have been accepted to Stanford Business School and have never looked back ever since.
Awesome. So what were these schools that you applied to?
I'd applied to Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, and Chicago both, and I'd made it to Stanford and Columbia.
Nice. Got it. And what went into preparing for the application cycle? So how did you prepare for your GMAT or GRE, and what else went into that preparation process?
Sure. So I think honestly, it was a very uncharted way in which I prepared because I was someone with 2.5 years of work experience when I started putting my application together, and I know that is already on the lower side of the work experience. Then second, I knew there's only one person from my alma mater who ever made it to Stanford. So everybody around me was like, "Why are you even wasting your $250 or $300, whatever the fee was at that time?" And three, all the top consultants who I was actually speaking to, they were like, "You don't have a chance in top 10, so why even waste your and my time?" And that's when I was like, "I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm going to do what I want. I'm my own boss." And I kicked them aside and did not use a consultant, fortunately, unfortunately. In terms of GMAT, I took coaching with Jambori. It's a coaching or preparation school here in India where they give you GMAT coaching. Took a bunch of tests. Was not great with GMAT, honestly. Got a 690 in the first attempt, 730 in the second attempt. And I think I scored a straight 100 on I think the quant part of it, or like very, very high score in quant. But I think English is where, even though I would think my spoken English is really good, but when it comes to GMAT English, I think they're looking for very specific grammar, which I honestly did not
Yeah.
have. But at that time, I was like, 7:30 it is. I don't want to take another attempt. I don't have the time. I want to focus on the application. So then I start focusing on the application. We can go deeper into it if you want. But that was the overall journey. Did a lot of mock tests for GMAT, etc., and did not hire a consultant because they were not like helping me in the right direction. It was honestly being very demotivating. So I thought, let's just do it on our own.
Yeah, I've actually heard that a lot from some of my other friends when they talk to consultants that have very limited context. And everybody knows that applying to these bigger business schools, more reputed ones, the odds are against you, but it's about
Exactly.
embracing that. So I am curious though, what went into shortlisting which schools you wanted to apply to? How did you come up with that list of 4 schools?
Sure, and I think this is a very critical question that people should really spend time on in terms of finding which business schools do they actually want to apply to. So start with a broader approach that, okay, which country do I even want to go to, right? You have US, UK, do you want to go back to a B school in India, etc. So for me, first I narrowed that down that, for me, I'd done an undergrad in NSIT. So I felt that I already have an exposure of Indian education system. And I really saw this as my opportunity to get an international exposure. And with the diversity, and also my brother had been back from US after 6 years. So I just felt I felt more connected to US as a market. So for me, the choice became clear that I want to go to US. That was the first checkpoint. Then the second thing that I really thought of, which I feel sometimes we don't give enough credit to, is that what is the reason that I'm doing this MBA, right? What is like my post MBA goal? Like, why would I call this a success? Because we have to understand you're spending 2 years of time, which means that you're not earning in those 2 years.
Yep.
Plus, you have a massive student loan that you would most likely take unless you get a 100% scholarship. Which again, kudos to you if you're able to. I was not able to. I got a significant scholarship, but again, it's still a massive student debt that I took for those 2 years. So for me, the way I weighed it is that those 2 years, like what is the return on investment that I can get by doing that MBA? So that became an important part of how I would think about where to go and whether to go or not to go at all. The third thing that I personally thought of is because I knew that coming from an entrepreneurial background, being born and brought up in a business family, I knew that for me, learning to do business and to build that acumen that I feel more confident about my business decisions became a critical filter. That was one reason why I applied to both Columbia and Stanford. So Stanford because being in Silicon Valley, a lot of focus on entrepreneurship. Columbia, if you'll see again, I joined there. The family business, they have this shorter version of the MBA where they get students to join a little less because there's no internship in that. So I don't remember what they call it necessarily, but they have a family business focused MBA where the second year is a combined MBA for all the students together. Then Chicago, Booth I'd applied because I knew that I have a banking background and Booth is known to have a lot of focus on finance, etc. And Harvard, I think it was that childhood dream that I just want to apply to Harvard. I don't think there's any fit per se. So what I'm trying to say here is that I honestly feel that every school has a personality of its own. Every
Right.
school has a specialization of its own in some way. And the best way to actually make it in some way would be to find a way to map yourself and where do you stand in terms of what they're looking for. And a very silly thing, but one more thing that I did focus on while deciding the top 4 schools that I wanted to apply for was that what's the application process like? There were some of these schools that application questions were just so different and they needed a lot of attention. So I was
Yep.
also just optimizing for that, if I'm doing 4 at a time, then can I just replicate some of the material, even though the essays I feel are very, very personalized to each of the schools, but do the overall question type stays similar if not anything else. So that is another reason why I feel that this is the 4 school list. And lastly, I was very sure that I don't want to do quantity work. I want to do like very quality high focus work, especially because I was not using a consultant. So I felt just hyper focusing on these 4 schools would make more sense for me personally.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point about the consultants. Because a lot of the people that reach out to me always ask me about I didn't go to an IIT. Do you think I'll have a chance of getting into Stanford, or whatever school it is? So they usually look at their own backgrounds and discount themselves, whereas in your case it was the opposite. So can you tell me more about that experience of dealing with these consultants? What exactly did they say that was very discouraging, and how did you still decide to pursue your goal?
Okay, so first I want to make sure that I'm not saying that consultants can't be the right thing for you. Maybe they are the right thing for you. In my specific case, because my overall profile was not already so strong. Like think of it, right? A consultant, he's optimizing his rate, right? He wants that from the students that he intakes, most of them they make it to the IVs, etc. So he's going to optimize for the best of students, and there's nothing wrong with it. And some of these consultants I've spoken to couple of my friends who did not get through in the first go, and in the second time they used a consultant and it made a huge difference to their profile. Like literally one of my friends, he had zero offer in the previous year, and with a consultant he had 7 Ivy League offers the next year.
That's
And what
cool.
changed significantly was, how he approached his application. So I would not, like, you have to take that decision for yourself, that, is this the right thing for me or not. In my case specifically, the other advantage that I had is that I had a brother who had stayed in States for 6 years. Because for someone who's not using a consultant, getting that cultural aspect of the language, the tone, etc., becomes very critical. Because there are times when I might think that this is absolutely the right way of saying this thing, but the other person is just not able to comprehend it. So
Mm.
then it becomes critical to at least have that lens that someone is there to support you nonetheless, so that you're culturally all right. So I think because of that, also, I was able to discount the idea of having a consultant. For me personally, because I was not doing an MBA with the thought ki I'll take it irrespective of where I get it. For me, I was very specific that I'll go for an MBA only if I make it to these XYZ schools, because I have come from NSIT. It's a great brand, okay? But at the same time, I see that the kind of delta that an IIT brand gets a student. So for
Yep.
me, that mattered a lot, that, it's not about let's do an MBA for the sake of another degree. I was doing it very thoughtfully, and I was okay with the fact that if I don't get to any of these, I'll just not do an MBA. So again, everybody will have to really ask this, like answer this question for themselves, that, how important is it to do an MBA? Where do you want to do it for? And what is your goal? And that's why I keep coming back to that. It can be great to do an MBA from even a tier two school if you're looking for maybe a salary jump, and there's nothing wrong in expecting that outcome from an MBA school, right? But that's where having that clarity, that why are you doing it? In my case, the consultants discouraged me for these specific schools. They were happy to help me with the other, maybe 10 to 20 rank school, but that's where I was not convinced that, I want to give it my best shot, and it's okay if it doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But I think that was the reason. It's not like they said something which made me feel that, oh, these people should not be used. It's just then I was not looking at the same goalpost for me, and I felt I want to go ahead with my own goalpost.